All right, it's been a wild week and there's a lot to cover. So rather than give a witty intro, it's too late, I've just done it, let's start the show. I know what you're all thinking. Let's start with macro and talk about other stuff. But, this time it's been a wild week. The Bitcoin ETF has come out. Let me just make sure this looks good. It's been approved. It's trading on 11 different ETF products. You can get on exchanges. Okay, we'll cover that later. There's a lot to cover in the macro also, and a lot to cover on a lot of airdrops and projects. Where do we even begin? Let's start with macro and then move more granular. Okay, so the first bit of news is the CPI came out, the Consumer Price Index. It was higher than expected, 3.4% instead of the expected 3.2%. Now, if you've looked at the last 2 months, inflation has been just like very slow. I think it was like the first time it was 0%, and then it was like 0.1% or something like that. This is a bad sign, by the way. Like, if there's anything to note as a red flag, this is it. I'm surprised actually no one is really talking about this. But a lot of the increases came from rentals because there's a lot less houses being sold, and then the other thing was actually insurance, especially like car insurance, and those are kind of lagging effects. That's the good news. So like car insurance, for example, takes some approvals to increase in some areas. So basically, if inflation spiked, let's say 10% a year ago, or let's just say hypothetically, and then they wanted to raise the rates 10%. That would probably take like a year to show up. So basically, it kind of makes sense. These metrics are up. The rest of them seems okay, except we might have some conflicts in the Middle East that might raise oil prices at any moment in time. So again, red flag, but no panic yet. So we're going to obviously, last year we talked about at some point we want to stop talking about CPI. But this has a lot of downstream effects. Number one is rate cuts. We might not see any rate cuts for a while. Like, it might get delayed because of this news. The second thing is you might see treasuries creep up. You see it's like kind of inching up right now. You see there's a spike on the day of the announcement. Then it dropped, and now it's back up. So basically, we were thinking this like treasuries would just keep going down because of the upcoming rate cuts, but it is creeping back up now because inflation could be also creeping back up, right? We could also go into more detail on this, but there's no time. There's too many things going on this week. We also saw lots of layoffs happening. So Google is cutting hundreds of jobs. Amazon, Twitch is laying off a third of their workforce. It's actually crazy. And this, again, is trickling down into crypto. So Near Foundation is cutting by 40%. I think Citigroup was like 20,000 employees. That's over 2 years, I think, though. So basically, this is a very crazy time. Obviously, some of it has to do with AI. The other part has to do with cost cutting. But yeah, like the macro, there are some cracks happening. It's not all just up only rosy picture. And again, we kind of predicted this in the newsletter, slow Q1, and we're just starting Q1. So we might see like even a dip in Q1, right? As a result of all this stuff. In terms of like other things happening in crypto companies, we're probably going to see some acquisitions. We're going to see some shutdowns. For example, today, Artifact, the founders of Instagram, created a news scrolling app that's shutting down. We're going to see some mergers like this. Clayton and Line are going to probably merge. And then even from the regulatory side, even though we just got a break from the Bitcoin ETF, there's still some other things coming up. For example, the Do Kwon lawsuit, the SEC lawsuit over there. Okay, so my computer is really struggling right now. So what I'm afraid of, I might just need to buy a new computer for this office because it is struggling right now. I'm just gonna like start Xing things out. That might make it a little faster for this video. Okay, let's jump into some NFT and gaming news. Number one, GameStop. They're going to bail on the whole crypto gaming piece. That's really bad, by the way, for Immutable X and what was the other one? Loopring, right? These are really bad for those projects because they were relying on this as a distribution channel for new users, right? So, if you're shorting anything, IMX and Loopring, LRC, right? Sotheby's is actually doing auction for Bitcoin ordinals. That's actually like more legitimizing these NFTs as real things. This could also be like a top signal, right? If it's getting mainstream adoption, who else is going to buy after that, right? Same with the ETF, by the way. Same thing happened. We are seeing some interesting things. Starkware, this is, by the way, a project that we're going to follow closely. One of the most hyped upcoming layer 2 projects. This CEO just stepped down, but this sounds like more like a health issue rather than a macro issue. And then also from a gaming perspective, Arbitrum is in the middle of all this layer 2 stuff, right? And we made it a spotlight coin last week. It's up a lot, like 20% or something this week. But they're going to do an airdrop called XAI, and XAI is like a layer 3 to Arbitrum. And we've talked about this as a narrative in this year. And XAI, by the way, is doing very well. It's just gone up only. And if you bought an NFT, you can get an airdrop for them. And then I think there's a staking thing coming up. And you could buy a node, kind of like Gala nodes, Gala, Gala nodes. You can buy a node where you can generate essentially revenue by supporting the network. Again, these are all things that maybe I can talk about in the newsletter, but there's just so much to cover. Let's talk about the overall market this week, okay? So again, Bitcoin ETF, we expected potentially a sell the news event, and that's exactly what happened. Actually, in the newsletter, we said it was going to go to 50K and then drop to 46. It actually went to 49, dropped to 43. Actually, again, this is expected behavior, but one thing that we didn't expect so quickly was immediate capital rotation into Ethereum. Because remember, BlackRock and all these other folks also filed an Ethereum ETF, spot ETF. And you could see Ethereum is up 13% versus Bitcoin down 8%, right? So the money, essentially, smart money always goes to the next thing, right? The moment the ETF came out, smart money is like, okay, upside is limited from here until April because of the halving. We'll probably see Bitcoin do well in March. Okay, so just putting that out there. But for the moment, all this hype has been priced in. It's time to move on to the next thing. That is Ethereum. And the next thing for Ethereum is not actually the ETF. It's actually the Dencun upgrade, which we talked about in the last newsletter. So the Dencun upgrade is good for layer 2 projects. It's good for anything with rollups because it takes the data that you're going to transport back to Ethereum, puts it in a separate container, essentially, that doesn't affect the fees, basically makes rollups cheaper. So all these layer 2 projects, we've been positioning ourselves, hey, like Arbitrum, Buy Optimism, right? These things are probably going to do very well in the next like 2 or 3 weeks, essentially. All right. So there is a game plan there for the next couple weeks. And that's also why we talked about Metis. Actually, we didn't really show Metis in a while. It's down today. That's okay, though. So Metis, we actually, if you look at the newsletter, it's one of our top 5 coins. I think it's our number 1, actually, or number 2. But it actually is up a crazy amount. In fact, in the last 2 weeks, our newsletter came out about 2 weeks ago, a little more than 2 weeks ago, actually. It's actually up 32% since then. So not bad, right? Not bad when the market is like essentially flat from 2 weeks ago. And then also up 51% in the last week alone. So basically, you guys are probably like, oh, Jeff, you were wrong, right? Because it kind of fell a little bit to 73. Now it's back to 118. So layer 2s, those are the things to look out for in the next month, essentially. That's the next narrative we should look for. And then after that, think about Ethereum ETF. Remember, the probability of the Ethereum ETF going through, getting approved, is much lower than Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin, it was like I guess, fair launch. You don't really know who's working on it. And it's just like the inflation is from the miners. With Ethereum, there's just a lot more going on. There was a ICO, initial coin offering, although that was for ETC technically. But overall, Ethereum has a little more baggage going forward. And that's something just to be aware of. I don't want it to make it seem like the ETF is a 100% thing, probably like a 50% thing. And remember, we did say the Bitcoin ETF was like a 90% thing, right? Okay, so let's go through a little more of some of the coin prices here. You'll notice, remember, Ethereum is probably the barometer here because Bitcoin is having a sell and use effect. So things like, obviously Lido is the same thing as Ethereum, but these other altcoins are up like 6%, roughly half compared to Ethereum. And then the Ethereum ecosystem projects are doing better. Chainlink is one of those. It's a ERC20 token. Uniswap is another one, right? Up 18%. It's also on Ethereum, the coin. And then again, everything else is like a little, like half of that. And then again, Ethereum up 11% because it's a layer 2 on Ethereum, right? You guys are seeing this trend, right? You can actually like see the market, how it thinks. During the dip of the Bitcoin ETF, we did I think Hall of Fame trade where Celestia was down to $13. I even put in the news, Bitcoin is starting to reverse, buy some other altcoins while they're still down. And we singled out Celestia mainly because I wanted the airdrops, but timing wise, it was perfect. Went from 13 to 20 right away in a few days. Again, I can't do this consistently. This is impossible for anybody to do consistently. But yes, if I write something in the news channel that spams to like 4,000, 5,000 people, and it's a lot, very consequential. It takes a lot of courage for me to even write trades like that. I don't want to make a mistake for everybody else. I'm okay losing money on a trade. It's fine. But I know other people are going to be kind of mad if things happen. So remember, this is never financial advice. This is just taking from the market data points and seeing if there's anything actionable, right? The other thing I want to point out, Arbitrum, our spotlight coin last week, up 27%. And remember, this is because it's a layer 2 and the layer 2s will benefit the most. But also, Arbitrum has like half the volume of all the stuff going on the layer 2s. And now they're rolling out stuff like XAI on their layer 3s, which are pumping like crazy. So there's a lot of stuff with Arbitrum and the layer 2s. And if you read the newsletter, I believe our target was $2.50 when it was down to like 120. So things have really, really played out quickly. A lot of these narratives and a lot of these price targets are usually meant from like 1 to 2 months out, sometimes even longer. And it's only been 16 days or 17 days from the newsletter, and things are already kind of like pricing very quickly. I highly doubt that my small readership has the market moving capabilities. So it is, again, these narratives that are playing out. And remember, we called Say out 2 months ago's newsletter, maybe even 3 months ago, because of their parallelized EVM, which again, I don't know if that's possible, but they're copying Monad. So their coin is just going crazy because it's like a unique differentiator. And remember, Celestia is also a unique differentiator by doing modularity, right? Okay. Anything else we want to talk about? Oh, by the way, this coin, remember, the whole market's shooting up this whole time. And I specifically called out BitTensor for being a fraud. Like I try to understand the project. Doesn't make sense. Just a bunch of buzzwords trying to pump up the project. And it was at 330, I believe, 320 at the time. And I specifically said this should go down while the whole market was pumping up. Remember, that takes courage. Courage. Man, I'm just saying this because I'm going to be wrong sometimes. And I don't want everyone to assume that I'm going to be right a lot. Now, there's a couple of anomalies here. CHZ, Chiles, randomly pumping up. I don't know if this is like a soccer related thing or like a new sport is coming out and it's pumping up. DYDX just claimed that they're the number one in volume now, even surpassing Uniswap. And Blur, which is another crazy thing, is pumping like mad. And again, I don't have a great answer as to why for these ones. Clayton, we'll talk about this. We actually just did. Clayton is merging with, was it Finisha? I can't even pronounce. It's bad if I can't pronounce Finchia, Finschia. They're merging. That's probably why the